acting, so you're in the same tempo, and then you sing your piece and record it on another electronic equipment. So it was very complicated. I had a hard time with it. Um, and I think that we're a union, so that presents more problems. The reason they can get away with not paying any of us right now, we're all on unemployment, is because of something called force majeure. And that means it's an act of God, it's closed. And I don't know how many people would do it for free. And if the Met paid us, then that opens a can of worms I'm not sure they're willing to go down, because then it takes us off of unemployment, and then it sort of opens them up to having to start paying us again.
Okay, Suzanne, thank you for that. Why don't you officially start, introduce who you are,
Okay.
what you do, and have.
All right. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you, all your faces. It's so lovely this morning. I am a singer, and I've been singing in the Metropolitan Opera Chorus for 23 years. And right now we are not, would have been opening night, I was telling them, if you just came on. This would be our opening night. So it's kind of ironic that I'm here with you guys today. But yeah, I just thought it'd be kind of fun to share with you my journey of how I became a singer, what goes on, what is all involved in the training to become an opera singer. How did I become in the Met Opera Chorus? And then I have my website to show you pictures of my costumes. Also, I have some recordings of my singing that I thought I'd share if you're interested in that. And then you can ask me any questions that you want. So, does anybody here, I assume, Bess, you have some real experience with the opera. Does anybody else? Have you ever been?
I just lost you.
You lost me?
We hear you.
Oh, okay. Has anybody else here ever been to an opera?
I've been in
Okay.
Okay.
Here I am clapping for you, dear. Here we are at the opera clapping for you.
Oh, wonderful. Which opera was that? Do you know which opera that was for?
No, I can't remember, and I try and go to as many as I can. I love it. It's so wonderful.
Oh, that's so great.
So happy you're here. So happy you're here.
And Doris, you've been to the opera?
Many times. We've had a subscription from the time the Met was at 39th Street.
Wow.
That's how far back we go. And then, of course, when it was built at Lincoln Center, we continued our subscription. But way back on 39th Street, I'm sure you weren't born.
Wow,
So
no. I've only seen pictures of the 39th Street and seen some recordings.
Yes.
So
that's how far back our subscriptions go.
Oh wow! And Phyllis?
And
Yes, I've come to like opera rather late in life, and I have to credit the course that I've taken here with Jim on Fridays for opening me up to understanding it better. So I have attended. Okay. Yeah, I find it just marvelous. And you know, they also have the English, which I really need the English to understand it. I'm not that much of an aficionado yet that I can always get it without that. So I have been to the Metropolitan Opera to see it, and it was quite beautiful. And I also went Queensborough Community, you know, like more local operas, which were terrific also. So I'm enjoying it now. I hope now, like you say, we'll have to do it virtually, but the music is just gorgeous. And Camilla, I really have to thank Jim for opening my eyes to it. I enjoy him, and now I'm able to enjoy opera. Even now, at this point in my life, I'm learning things. So always thank you.
Now, are you aware that if and maybe Carmela, you could even help them with this, the Met Opera On Demand, it's an app, they're giving free performances every night.
How do we get onto that?
I believe you go to do you know where the App Store is on your phone or iPad?
An app is if you have a smartphone.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, but you can only do it on the phone. You can't get it on the computer?
I don't think it's on
Oh.
metopera.org.
Online?
I don't think so. I think it has to
I
be
think my phone's too small to really
on
enjoy it.
demand.
Thank you.
But if you do go on metopera.org, which is
We can get it on our virtual computer. We can.
okay, all right, that would be great because every night since we've been closed, they're streaming a free opera. I've seen things I've never seen before that I got to see things I was in and then I got to watch it, or I've seen a few things that I wasn't in but didn't get to
Wow.
end up going. So that's been very cool. And
Do you
they're
know what time? I'm sorry. Do you know what time that comes on, or do we have to log in to
uh,
find out?
I think every night they start at 7 o'clock maybe, and they run for 24 hours. So
Oh,
you
God.
don't, yeah, you don't have to be there right at 7, but I think at 7 the streaming comes on, and then you could
It
start.
is online. I looked at it online.
Okay, all right,
From
good.
7:30 until, from 7:30 p.m. until 6:30 the following day.
Yep, so it's
So,
it's about a 24-hour window. So if you only want to watch act 1 at night, then you can watch one act then, and you can tune in with your coffee in the morning and watch act 2 and 3 or 4 and 5, depending on how long the opera is. That's great. But it's a really good service that they have provided for free to try and keep our audiences interested and coming back, and show that we're not just gone and out of people's minds. You kind of have to stay in the group consciousness, and plus it does bring a lot of pleasure to people during this time when we're all kind of grasping for something that brings you pleasure, right? Yeah, Doris?
Do you have a favorite opera?
Oh, you know what? I love that question, but I can honestly say it depends. I'm a huge Puccini lover, so I would say almost anything Puccini I love. There are certain things I love to sing, and there's certain things I like to watch and listen to. So, um, a person's voice might only suit Mozart, for instance. You may not be able to sing a Verdi soprano role. Like I am not a Verdi soprano. So I'll never be able to sing one of those roles. But do I love listening to him? I do. I really love that. So I think it can really depend. But I mean, as far as like a person seeing their first opera, I think you can't go wrong with La Boheme, Madame Butterfly, any of the Puccini, because they're so melodic and romantic, and it's sort of what you think of when you think of opera. Always somebody dies almost. Um, there's a love story, and there's some tragedy. I do like comic opera, and that can be a lot of fun, like the Barber of Seville or something. But I think if you really want to get the sweeping lines of opera, something Puccini would be a great first opera. What is your favorite? Do you have one, Phyllis? Oh, I don't know if she can hear me.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
I like the last ball, Ambala Matilda.
Umbalo in Maschera. Yeah, I have a picture of my costume in that. I'll bring that up. Um, yeah, I also love Richard Strauss's music. It's
Oh, I
very,
do. Rosencavalier.
yeah,
The
Der
I think that's
Rosenkavalier.
my favorite.
Yeah,
Rosencavalier.
the the music is very complex, but it's
Yes, I love it.
also
I love it.
long arching lines, and he usually has some comic element in there too. And I mean, it's just brilliant, brilliant stuff. So should I move on and show you some of my pictures? Would you like to see some pictures from my different productions? Because I have a lot of them. Because I'm not performing right now, I'm actually working on developing a voice studio. So this is, a friend of mine drew this picture of me. She's a fantastic illustrator, and that's an original that she drew for my website. And so this tells a little bit about my background. I started out as a clarinet player in the marching band, if you can believe that. And I started playing the piano when I was about 4 years old. And my mother was a singer, and I grew up hearing her sing. And she had a classically trained voice, which nobody around me in Nebraska did you hear that. So I guess I had the advantage of hearing that, as a child. And then when I got older, when I went to college, I actually auditioned for the state. I was at Iowa State, and I took the university chorale course as an extra music credit. And they wanted to hear all of the first sopranos sing a solo, and I just happened to know how it went because I'd been a clarinet player in the orchestra when we played this piece. And so when he went down the row, I knew how it went. And so I got the solo, and I thought, holy crap, how am I going to sing this in front of people? So I started taking lessons as a freshman in college. And my very first teacher was a tenor. And he said, I want to play you a recording. And I said, okay. And he said, this is the greatest singer since Caruso. And I didn't even really know who Caruso was, although I had heard of him. And he played Pavarotti singing. And I was pretty amazed, I have to say, wow, how is the human voice making that sound? And I think that, in a nutshell, is what got me really serious about learning how to sing. So from there, I ended up switching my major. I was a clarinet major. I ended up switching to being a piano major with a voice sort of music education. And then by the time I was a senior in college, I switched to a performing degree. And I went on to the Eastman School of Music and studied opera and performance literature. And ever since, I've been studying with different teachers and understanding how the voice works. And, getting the job in the Met Chorus has allowed me to hear the best singers from around the world in the best orchestra. So it's been a dream job in many ways. So I want to show you this wig that I have here. I don't know, can you guys see that?
Yes, by far.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's really, I have more pictures. These are all pictures over my 23 years. I'm going to go to the gallery. Um, Having costumes made just for a person, it's like you stand there like a mannequin, and they fit them on you. So this is, I have all the different operas I wrote at the bottom, or I have typed. This is a French opera, Andrea Chenier. I'll go through some of them. This was the Zeffirelli Carmen. This is not the Carmen we're currently doing. But when I got the job at the Met 23 years ago, you end up inheriting the person's costumes who you replaced. And I replaced a woman that was probably 8 inches taller than me. So every costume was so much bigger, so much longer waisted. They would have to take them all apart and rebuild them. And I remember this one was particularly difficult for them to fit. We had to have it redone many times. But I used to be called Mary Poppins because of my little hat. And I think the fringe and just the whole look. But my daughter was in the children's chorus when she was 6 until about 12. And she played my daughter in this show. And I have some wonderful memories of that. Let's see, how can I get my...
It'll clog up the vacuum again.
What's going on here? It opened it up too much. Oh, I'm gonna go that. I can't seem to reach it because this thing is here. Can I move this? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. Go back, go back. Come on. Oh, there we go. I might not go through all of them like this. I think what I might do is go through the gallery and just show you a few of the ones I really like. This one here came from a show called Cyrano de Bergerac, and it was one we hadn't done before. It was new to me. And that was, the thing about being in the chorus is in one act you might be a peasant, and in the next act you're an aristocrat. So this is the same opera here and here. These are two totally different looks. And this beautiful costume over here had matching dyed shoes, a fan, the whole 9 yards. And nobody ever hardly saw it because I was placed way up on the set was way up on the top row of box seating, and all you could see was about from my neck up. So that was always, I was like, why do they waste money on these beautiful costumes you never see? But then you never know, because, they might have changed their mind and had me down on the floor, and, then you'd see the whole costume. Now here's one from Der Rosenkavalier we were just talking about. This is the old Der Rosenkavalier, and this skirt they rigged it so that Baron Ox could rip it off of me when I went past him. And that was pretty fun. Yeah, I had to fake falling on his lap and then twirl around, and he ripped my skirt as I got up, and half of my costume came off. This costume here is from Die Fledermaus, and you can't really see it from here, but it has little bats all over it, because in German that translates to the flying bat, which is flying mouse, or bat, the bat is what that means. Now this costume here in the middle, that was my very, very, very first show. It was from Die Meistersinger, and by Wagner. And I was pregnant, but you can't tell because of where my arm is placed. And the director, the music director that hired me, he didn't even know it. And then the next year when I went back to sing, that was a part-time. That was just what they call an extra chorus show, where they hire more people because Wagner needed about, oh gosh, we probably had over 100 people on stage. I think it was like 120 or something like that in the last scene. And we didn't show up for that call to get dressed till 11 o'clock at night. That's how late the Wagner operas can go. So I think we finished at like close to 1 in the morning. But that was when they used to start the curtain at 8 o'clock, sometimes 7. But now most of the curtains are earlier because people just, they have to get home and go to work the next day. But I have a funny story about that show. We were behind the curtain waiting for the last act to begin, and it didn't go out. The curtain never left. And the music is started, and we're like all looking at each other like, what do we do? So we all started singing behind the curtain, and eventually they did open the curtain. But for a while we were just singing back there to ourselves because they couldn't, I don't know what had happened, but the curtain just was not going out. We've had a lot of mishaps. Oh my gosh. I could spend a whole hour talking about all the things that have gone wrong during a performance, because it is live and we do have problems with the set often. Things break down. The horse won't go out for the carriage. Gosh, when we were in Japan on tour, we actually did La Boheme, and they did have I'm pretty sure they still had the horse bring out Musetta's um, carriage, and the set was so short that they were worried that it was going to go in the pit. So we've definitely had some scary moments. We used to use real fire in this Russian opera called Kovanchina, and in the very end, it's such a powerful way to end the opera. We would all come out with a candle and go up in this tower, and literally we were setting ourselves on fire. And it really was a real fire hazard. They switched to electric candles later on because it was so dangerous. But the first time we did it, we had real candles, and it was quite scary. You know, you couldn't get too close to people, and all our clothes have to be fire retardant and all of that. This Dr. Faustus, that was kind of a funny look. We were all dressed like men, and that was sort of earlier on in my 23 years. And just a few years ago, that season, I was a man at least 3 times. So I was foreshadowing something, I decided. Now, this is Don Carlo, which is one of those Verdi beautiful operas. And this is the same costume here. This is a different act, but the same production. A lot of times, I probably have done like 2 or 3 productions of any given opera, because every time they want to let a new director come in and they want to give it his spin on it, then we do everything from scratch all over again. I've done at least 3 Otellos, at least 3 different Toscas. Now this is the old Falstaff here with this tall, funny hat. These are from the same production, different acts. This is what it looks like in my dressing room with people sitting at their places, which is, it's kind of fun. You go in there. This is the new Falstaff over here versus the old one. This is the old Parsifal production. The new one is very, very, very different, but I guess it's critically been quite well received. Instead of looking like this, I have on a black long wig, comes in my face, and a white slip, and we go out and sing this same scene in a pool of blood. And that is no joke. We were standing in hot water that they had turned red, and did this whole scene like almost in a shallow swimming pool. And that was really challenging because every night we had to walk to the stage, we had robes and we had slippers, and then we'd get to the side of the set just enough time to take it all off. Somebody would come and brush our hair again so it was really straight and we all looked identical. And then we'd all come out in this hot, icky red stuff. And the really gross part was some of the wig hair came out and you could feel it between your toes. And it was just, oh my God. What people don't know we go through. These are this Il Pirata right here. We've only done that performance or that production only once. I think it was going to come back this next year. But that was one that Renee Fleming wanted to do, so they did it for her. And it was really quite beautiful. But sometimes if a really famous singer has an opera they want to do, and Peter Gelb, who's the general director, says, what would you like to do with the Met this year? They'll say, I would really like to do a production of Il Pirata, even though it's kind of one nobody's ever heard of much. I think it's gotten a little bit more productions in the last number of years. But usually there's some reason that operas are not popular. This is what I have found. If it's a rarity, it's because there's something about it that maybe, not always, but usually there's some reason that it fell from, the main repertoire. Um, People either didn't like it, it didn't sell tickets, it's got a weak plot line, it's impossible to cast, it's too controversial, the subject matter is so dated. Or if they do try and update it, which that is very common too. Like if anybody's ever seen the Mets Rigoletto, the most current production of that is set in Las Vegas. And the soloists are sort of like the Rat Pack. So I don't know what I thought about that. They had showgirls and the whole 9 yards. And I think it was,
Have a pole dancer.
yeah, I think they probably did have pole dancers. Who knows? Now here's another one of these tall wigs in Hamlet, not quite as tall as that other wig. But how they make these tall wigs is they put a metal cage inside of the wig, and then they bring the hair up over it, so it holds it in place, and it's not just hair inside of there. But we would have to have people come and pin them on our heads, because if they're not anchored really well, if you don't get them in those pin curls that your hair's in, it could fall off on stage. It really, really could. Um, so that is not something you want to mess around with, because you
Must be very heavy.
It's a little bit heavy, but not as heavy as you would think, because the cage is quite light. I think it may be plastic now. I don't know that it is wire or steel. Now here is some when I'm younger. This was my first Gilbert and Sullivan production on the left, and I was in my early 20s. I look so young. And my character's name was Phyllis, and this was a solo part, and the tenor, his character's name is Strephon, and the story is that his mother is from the fairyland and his father is immortal. So before they get married, he feels like he has to be honest with her. And he says, Phyllis, I have something to tell you. I'm paraphrasing, I don't have the dialogue, but he says, I have something to tell you about my family. And she says, oh, really? And he's like, yes, I'm half a fairy. And she says, well, which half? So that was always my best line, and people loved that. It was a little bit naughty. So I really have fun thinking about that opera and which half of him was the fairy. And this picture is from the old The Elixir of Love, and we were all in pastel colors, and it was very sort of comic book looking, very, very pretty. Now this is the La Boheme picture that's kind of, it's the Zeffirelli production that we pray they don't ever replace, because we all love it so much. But you can see this is a black shawl that I have on, and it doesn't really look black anymore. It's faded under the lights. And the skirt, it had the most beautiful red taffeta silk plaid skirt, but over the years the silk rotted and it had to be replaced. So they put another kind of brown and black plaid or blue. So it's not nearly as fetching. Now these are beautiful from the old La Traviata. This is another Zeffirelli production. And Renee Fleming was the Violetta in this one, and it was a new production they made for her. And those were extremely beautiful. They bring in the finest fabrics from Italy, and our costume shop seamstresses are just nobody's better. They are museum quality. They hold up forever and a day and are just beautifully tailored. Now, these two on the left were from a Russian opera called The Lady Macbeth of Mitsenk, a very bizarre little opera by, I think it's Shostakovich, maybe. Um, and we did another one by him called The Nose, which was really quirky. But, you know, people like them because they're a little bit different. We usually have very interesting directors come in and, you know, make it really fun for the audience. Now, this is the old Tales of Hoffmann, Les Contes d'Hoffmann. If anybody has seen that production, it's really kind of fun. It's almost like an opera in 3 acts. He's retelling the story of the 3 loves of his life. Hoffman is. And Natalie Dessay was the first Olympia I ever heard, and that was in this costume. And that was when she was quite young, and she was interpolating like high G's above high C. And she was the best doll I think I've ever seen in my life. And her acting was spectacular. A lot of good memories there. There's more pictures of that. Now, this Louisa Miller, I only did that production once, but it's still in their repertoire, so they still are doing that production. These Macbeth pictures, I love this middle one. I look like my grandmother because she used to wear glasses like that. But she didn't look like that with her wig or hat, but just the way the glasses look. Something about it reminds me of her. That we played witches, and the the whole women's chorus were dressed up in these outlandish get-ups. And I guess the inspiration was Diane Arbus photos, the fringes of society. So we were bag ladies, kind of not in touch with reality, spooky because we maybe were crazy. So we had a lot of fun with that. If anybody wants to try and watch the old Macbeth, we have some really, really great music to sing in that. And then this is the same opera, different act. So you can see we transform ourselves during the intermission a lot. That opera, we had to start out as a witch, switch to, I had a very corporate suit on, I wore next, and a quick change, then into this ball gown outfit, back to a witch, and then into a refugee. So 5 costume changes in that night. That's a lot of work, and singing all of the music on top of it. The Madame Butterfly is this beautiful production. It's really so beautiful from the audience. I'm a relative in that picture with the pink and the blue. But down here on the left, that's the geisha's costume. So there's relatives and geishas. And the geishas is a small group of women, and I was covering the geishas. So occasionally I would go in and not play the relative. But most of the time I was the relative, which are these 2 here. The geishas had it's so hard because they had to study all the fan movements. We had to be able to get up and down from our knees gracefully, which is really hard, let me tell you. We all have knee pads on under there. I even had catcher mitt knee pads behind my knees to sort of help boost me up because, we're not 15 years old like these geishas were, and that's the hardest part of my job is all of the physical demands. We had to walk up a flight of stairs in the back while singing and totally in unison, so it looked like an elevator coming up. And so you have to have a lot of control in your, thigh muscles to really keep that slow climb. I mean, if you could walk it quickly, it's easier, but the slow climb was much harder. Now, these were from Manon, two different productions. In the middle, that's where I was a man last time we did it. But I was only a man in part of it. I believe I switched back to being a woman in, oh yeah, I was a woman in the first act. I was a peasant, kind of towns lady. And this Manon with the funny hat, everybody thinks that's a Turandot because it looks kind of, Chinese or something, but it was not. That production was also with Renee Fleming, and we had real dogs in that production. And when I actually was carrying a tray of jewelry that she was going to look through. And so we're at the top of the stairs and we're in a freeze. And she had just sung some high notes. And then there was a freeze, which means nobody's moving on stage. And all of a sudden, we hear this high pitched howl. And she's like whispering out of the side of her mouth to me, "What is that noise?" And I'm like, "I think it's the dogs." And it sure was. They were howling actually because I guess of the high notes. So after that particular rehearsal, we never saw those dogs again. They kind of were removed from the set. And I don't blame her. I mean, honestly, she's the star, and who needs that? But it's a fun story to remember. Now this is also the same story as the other Manon, but it's set by Puccini. And these are two different act costumes. You can see quite a different look again. I love this red jumpsuit. It's an actual vintage costume that they found. So they did not make that one, but they add all of the gloves, the jewelry, the purse, all of that. Now this Maria Stuarda, which is the Mary Queen of Scots story, that we did all of the, they were called the Three Queens, and they're all by Donizetti, who was not really thought of as a tragic composer, but these are all quite tragic. They all end up getting beheaded, I believe. I know Anna Bolena does, and Maria Stuarda does. Roberto Devereux, I don't think so, but I think she dies anyway of a broken heart or something. Now these are, oh, Nixon in China. That was one of my favorite operas. We did that with the famous director Peter Sellers. And it was the story of Richard Nixon going to China and Pat Nixon. And, there was a lot of history that went into that. Now this Pique Dame, this was my old wig. It's not quite as high as this wig, which now you can see it on a stand. So you can see how absolutely intricate it is and how hard it must be to balance on your head. I think it's not as heavy as it looks, but it does really require you carry your, posture so that you can keep it on straight. That's my dressing table you can see there in the dressing room. And there's a Romeo and Juliet picture. Now these pictures are from a Philip Glass opera, Satyagraha, which is the story of Gandhi and his passive resistance of the British taking over rule in India. And that's the old Samson and Delilah, which we were, the orange people, we called ourselves. Now this was one of the few times I was a blonde in this production of Stifilio. And the picture at the end called Sly, that's one of those rare operas you've never heard of and probably will never hear of again. We did do it because Placido Domingo wanted to do it. And his wife actually directed that, Marta. Um, so that was sort of a strange little show. It's never come back. I doubt it ever will. These are some of my professional headshots. Oh, now my being a nun, I always tell my mother, I'm either probably going to be a nun or I'm going to be a peasant, um, because that does seem to be the most popular parts for the chorus. Uh, One of my friends, she used to make a joke that she was going to put out a handbook for future choristers because you really need to be able to act while you're singing. But the most important characters you should know how to play are the happy peasant, the sad peasant, the Russian peasant, the starving, sad, and on the verge of death peasant. And then you go into the nuns. There's the happy nuns and the sad nuns. And oh gosh, I know the most uh, emotional part I ever did was I played one of the solo nuns in the Dialogue of the Carmelites. And if anybody has ever seen that or heard of that, it's based on a true story of a group of nuns during the French Revolution that were um, killed by the guillotine in the end. And we have to go up one at a time in the music. Poulenc wrote it so that the orchestra has a guillotine sound, and you hear something like chop. And usually they have something fall into a basket or something, like maybe to imitate, or so it sounds like a head being chopped off. I mean, it's really intense. And the really hard part is that it starts out a big chorus, and then one by one it goes down to just like one person left on stage. And it's so gripping because you know it really, really happened. And when I actually was at the Eastman School of Music, I did the Dialogue of the Carmelites. And I was also a nun. And I was crossing the street for real one day going to rehearsal early in the morning, and I was hit by a car. And when I went into shock, I had to go to the hospital, and they took me in for x-rays of my leg because I could tell it was all messed up. And the technician said, "Well, where is your mother?" And I said, "Well, my mom doesn't live here." And she says, "Well, why not?" And I said, "Because I'm in graduate school." I must have looked like I was about 12 years old. And anyway, so I couldn't think of a single person to call, and there was no cell phones back in those days. So I had to take a taxi back to my apartment, and I had crutches. So when I went to rehearsal for this Dialogue of the Carmelites, I was actually, believe it or not, a crippled nun was my character. And so the director, Richard Perlman, thought I was joking when I came in on crutches. And he was laughing. "Oh, ha, 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 that's so funny." And then I had to tell him I'd actually been hit by a car. He felt terrible. Well, so I had to rehearse with real crutches, and they decided they liked that. And so they gave me a pair of old wooden crutches to walk up to the guillotine with. And I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. So that was my. Oh, and we actually did get to go to a real Carmelite nunnery, which was really fascinating. They are cloistered, so they weren't allowed to meet us. But there is a sister called the Turn Nun who interacts with the public. And so she met us and brought us in. And the Turn Nun always would meet people for at this window where people could come and bring them food or donations. And so she would take the food from the people or the whatever they brought. But that was really, we even sang inside of the convent for them, and that just still gives me goosebumps. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to do that. Now here we're getting near the bottom, and you're going, how many pictures does she have? And these are just some of them. I mean, 23 years is a long time. I don't know why my computer's doing this. I guess it's because the screen share works a little differently. Somebody said they liked un ballo in maschera. So there's my un ballo costume right here.
Gorgeous.
And the black pieces in that headdress, I believe, are little black Swarovski crystals. Yeah, that's quite a costume. That set is really, really challenging. It was glass, like a mirror. And so we had to climb up from the steps on the side, which were exposed steps. They were not like off the set, like behind the flats. So we had to kind of stand around the base, and then we gracefully would have to climb up with these, big ball gowns on. And then try not to slip. Now, our shoes have rubber on the bottom of them, of course, that keeps us from really sliding. But that reminds me of another story when we did this opera, Mazeppa, which that's a Russian opera. I think they've only done once. So hard. But the set was so very raked. And a rake stage means the back of the set is higher than the front, so it's sort of at an angle like this. Well, what does that look like but a slide, right? So we were in our costumes the first time, and there was nothing to hang on to, and the women were singing about their sheaves of wheat out in the, I guess, kind of out in the fields. But our costume, for some reason, was a skirt. And it was a leather skirt, or a fake leather skirt, which was like plastic. And underneath of that was lining. And the lining against the plastic leather acted like a slide. And we had nothing to hold on to. So we were sitting on the side of the stage, and everybody, as they were singing, was just sliding down the front of and we were like grabbing for anything we could. And the general director at the time, or general manager, I should say, Peter Volpe, he was watching in the house. He came up on stage and tried to sit up there, and sure enough, even he was sliding down. So they had to take the lining out of the skirt, and I can't remember how they got us Velcro or something so that we didn't slip off of it. So all the things that you don't know when you're watching it from the audience.
Then we have 5 more minutes.
Oh no! Oh my gosh, I can't believe how fast this went. All right, I'm going to play you one thing of my singing then.
I wanted to hear them to hear you sing. Yeah.
All right. Yes. Gosh, I had no idea. Ah, come on. I guess, it's going. It takes it a few minutes. While it's loading, does anybody have any questions? Why is this taking so long? I think, there we go. Okay. All right. I'm going to play you one thing that is 3 minutes and 58 seconds.
How many cities have you performed in?
Oh, quite a few. I've been to Japan on tour 5 different times.
You can break the screen share.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Thank you.
It's been so enjoyable. I wish you had sung more.
Oh, I know.
Thank
Well,
you.
maybe we could do it another time, and we'll
Hope
start
so.
with the.
I would love that.
Forward to it.
Okay.
Hopefully you
Thank
could
you.
come back.
Please come back.
Okay. All right. I'd love to.
Okay, thank you so
Thank
much, Suzanne.
you.
Really, it was
This
lovely of
is
you to do this.
wonderful.
I appreciate it.
All right.
It's
Thank
wonderful.
So
you.
Thank
Suzanne,
you.
all you
Thank
have to
you.
do
you.
is to, leave the meeting.
Oh, I leave the meeting?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Just-
All right. Thanks, everybody.
you.
You're a
Thank
great
you.
audience.
Bye.
All right.
Thank
Be
you.
well. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
too.
So long.
Bye.
Thank you, Carmel.